Welcome back to Noir Alley. I'm Eddie Muller, and I'll be manning the city desk here today at the TCM Tribune. One term you'll rarely, if ever, hear me use when I'm talking about film noir is star-studded. You typically don't find grand hotels in this part of town. A-list pictures teeming top to bottom with big-name stars. Around here, it's usually a flophouse on some rainy street with a couple of losers playing out the string. But today's picture, While the City Sleeps from 1956, is an exception that proves the rule. The film features a star-studded cast, many of whom had already made an indelible impression in noir. Headlining are Dana Andrews, Ida Lupino, Vincent Price, Rhonda Fleming, George Sanders, Howard Duff, Thomas Mitchell, Sally Forrest, and John Barrymore, Jr. Unlike most noir films, there is no protagonist. This is an ensemble piece, something that 20 years later might have been made by Robert Altman. But this is 1956, the year that marked the end of the road in Hollywood for director Fritz Lang. His early German films, Metropolis and M especially, were cinematically innovative and wildly imaginative, and they earned Lang a reputation, for a while at least, as the world's most important filmmaker. That rep evaporated once he arrived in Hollywood in the mid-30s, having fled his Nazi-filled homeland. His American career was a rough road, full of peaks and valleys. Like Orson Welles, Lang had talent and ego in equal measure. And like Welles, he constantly butted heads with studio executives that he considered his inferiors. By the mid-50s, Lang was an aging autocrat with too many burned bridges behind him. Luckily, he found a neophyte producer who offered him a two-picture deal. Bert E. Friedlaub was the ex-husband of actress Eleanor Parker, who through a previous marriage had tapped into the Annenberg publishing fortune. Now he was hoping to make his mark in Hollywood. Lang, of course, hated him, but he loved Friedlaub's maiden project, adapting a novel called The Bloody Spur, about a manhunt for a serial killer loose in the big city. For Lang, it had echoes of his 1931 masterpiece, M. And like M, which was based on the actual case of Dusseldorf child killer Peter Curtin, The Bloody Spur was also based on a true story. For an entire year between 1945 and 46, Chicago had been terrorized by the grisly killings of young women. The unknown culprit used the victim's lipstick to scrawl a plea for his capture at one murder scene. Now, as the months wore on and the hunt for the lipstick killer led nowhere, the Chicago press went wild with gambits of its own, spurring the public's bloody imagination. Hence the title of the novel, written by one of those Chicago newshounds, Charles Einstein. The book was adapted by Casey Robinson, a veteran screenwriter with some memorable credits: Captain Blood, Dark Victory, King's Row, and Now Voyager, among plenty of other excellent films. But Casey Robinson had never been a newspaper man, and in collaborating with Lang, the film version lost the verisimilitude of a picture like Richard Brooks's Deadline USA. What Lang relished was the tale's mordant cynicism, how various journalists backstab each other in pursuit of the killer, not because they want justice, but because the first one to nab the murderer will win a promotion. The movie is not, however, as dark as it sounds, tonally or visually. The focus is on the shenanigans of media people vying for the upper hand, not on the psychosis of the young killer. Parts of it are even played for laughs, broadly, a risky choice given that humor was not one of Fritz Lang's strong suits. The film is deeply cynical, but nowhere near as caustic as Ace in the Hole or Sweet Smell of Success in depicting the worst traits of the Fourth Estate. A lighter tone is also apparent in the look of the film, which has little of the moody lighting associated with noir. Ernest Laszlo's cinematography is mostly flat, like TV lighting that doesn't need to be reset for each shot, which was a good idea when you're dealing with a cast that drank as much as this one. The less time they had to spend in their dressing rooms nursing a bottle, the better. Lang recalled one scene in which Andrews, Lupino, and Mitchell are hoisting a few in the corner saloon, and the actors actually were 3 sheets to the wind.
I knew it all along. Just knew I was going to find a friendly face down here.
My face is friendly. Hi.
Hello, you lovely people. I always see you two together, don't I?
You could do a column about it.
Oh, I'd love to, darling. I'm all for romance.
Sadly, by 1956, this was a common occurrence for Dana Andrews, who couldn't work before 11 a.m. due to the severity of his hangovers. He'd eventually enter rehab to maintain his career and life. A wrinkle added to the script that's particularly galling to me personally is the killer's simplistic motivation. Comic books are the source of his derangement. In Charles Einstein's 1953 novel, the young killer was obsessed with the Bible. But that wasn't going to get past the largely Irish Catholic Production Code Office. Blaming comic books was topical. The filmmakers were inspired by Seduction of the Innocent, a notorious book by Dr. Frederick Wortham, published in 1954, that spurred congressional hearings on comic books' role in juvenile delinquency. The chairman of those hearings, Senator Estes Kefauver, was even hired as a consultant on this film, clearly a publicity stunt. Hey, I spent my entire youth and a lot of my adult life reading these, and it didn't harm me one bit. This independent production was originally called News is Made at Night, and it was to be distributed by United Artists. But at the last minute, producer Friedlob changed the title and sold it to RKO, which promised to release the film sooner and in more markets. The new title, of course, refers both to prowling homicidal maniacs and the newspapers that work all night to get sensational stories into the first morning edition. From 1956, here's what happens while the city sleeps.